Welcome back to Boomers Being Fools. Boomer tries to get me fired for helping him. So I've been working at Walmart for about 6 months now. Nothing terrible has happened until yesterday. I had this older man, probably late 50s to early 60s, come over to me to ask me where hammers are. I know the grocery side of the store decently, but the GM side, no idea. So I told him, I'm not sure which aisle it's on. Let me check. I then pulled out my phone to search for it. For people who don't know, Walmart associates have an app called Me at Walmart that has a feature where you can search items. This boomer sees me take my phone out and loses his shit on me, calling me lazy and saying I can't just look at Facebook while working. I tried to explain that I was searching for his item, but then he started complaining about me talking back. At about this time, my supervisor came over and asked what was up. The boomer immediately starts yelling and screaming about how this employee is rude and needs to be fired. He is telling him how I was checking my Facebook while he was just asking for help. I have no clue why he thought I was on Facebook of all things. The Me at Walmart app looks nothing like Facebook. Now that he is screaming at my boss, I figured he would handle it and talk with me later. I go walk off, and this entitled fucker throws a bottle of dish soap at me, and it smacks me in the back of the skull. No injuries or anything, but still, that shit hurt. My supervisor calls over the AP coach and the main manager. I was sent to the break room with a coworker to make sure I'm fine. I had a headache, but that's it. I'm not sure what happened with 100% certainty, but I know that Boomer tried to assault another coworker, and cops were called, and he ended up getting hauled off in handcuffs. I was told he would never be allowed at the Walmart again, and I was given the rest of the day off. I know it's kind of an underwhelming end, but still. It's always nice when an asshole gets arrested for being an asshole. Update. Things got crazy. So I talked with my boss and the police today, and I have pressed charges, but that's not where the story ends. I'm just going through my day as normal when I start hearing screaming at the front of the store. Next thing I know, AP guy and main manager are running up to the front. I got this story secondhand from my mom, who is the team lead on the front end. This guy's wife came in and started demanding that they unban her husband and fire me. When they tell her no and that her husband is in the wrong, she goes insane. She is throwing anything she can get her hands on and is screaming that she's going to kill all you fuckers. And if I see that shit, he is dead. Talking about me. For the second time in slightly over 24 hours, the police are called. This woman starts fighting the cops and ends up getting tased. She's then hauled off in a cop car. Both are now in police custody, and the wife has been picked up on several charges such as terroristic threats, assault of an officer, and I'm pretty sure there were more. Update number 2. Just finished up at the doctor, no concussion or any sign of any injury. Guess my lack of brain cells came in handy this time, LMAO. Top comments. They say Facebook the same way my mom would say Nintendo. OP says, that's what I was thinking, but still, at the time, it seemed weird. Call the cops, that is a fucking felony here in New York State to assault a retail worker. Press charges on that dolt motherfucker. OP says, this all happened yesterday. I'm expecting to get called back today when I go in to figure out what to do. I will update if anything interesting happens. So we got that update. Law and Order screaming grandpa fuckhead throws stuff at hardworking American and didn't even have a good quip. I don't often take pleasure in the news of an arrest, but this time I will. Someone says, clean up your act. Would have been enough for me to forget pressing charges. Oh yeah, someone says, I'm glad he never found the hammers. He shouldn't be near them. And OP says, or anything that could be used as weapon. Boomers are reverting back to 2-year-olds right before our eyes. COVID gave everyone mini strokes and rotted out the empathy, I swear. You're going to see progressively stupider and more violent people at Walmart during the next 4 years. People think that the toddler-in-chief can say or do anything he wants without legal repercussions. That it means they can too. Next story. Boomer lady shocked I owned a car my husband was driving. My husband and I just picked up a pizza and got into my Ford Bronco, but he was driving at the time. Before we pull out of the parking lot, this older woman walks up to the passenger window and without any greeting asks, do you like this car? My husband said yes, and then I replied, yes, I really love it. She shot me the most confused look and said, oh, are you allowed to drive it too? It's actually my car, but I guess I do let him drive it sometimes, I said half laughing. She basically doubled down and said how nice it was of him to buy it for me. I didn't have it in me to explain to this woman that it is possible for a woman to drive, pay for, and own a vehicle, so I just said, yep, and rolled up the window. She probably wouldn't have been able to handle me telling her I not only own his vehicle, but also my husband's. He technically owns no vehicles. Afterwards, I did feel kind of bad for thinking about how owning their own vehicle may not have been an option for a generation of women. That is wild, man. Nah, don't feel bad. I think it's odd she acted that way. I could see if she was from the silent/greatest generation, like my grandparents, before women could have credit cards or bank accounts, etc. That would make more sense. This woman just seems ignorant. No reason for you to feel bad. And someone says, actually, the Equality Credit Opportunity Act was not passed until 1974, so that includes boomers too, since the boomer generation goes from 1946 to 1964, so women born in the 40s and 50s couldn't have credit cards or bank accounts either until then. Those of us born in the 60s were fortunately of age after this law was passed. Story number 3 just happened to me. TLDR, a Karen and her idiot son got trespassed from my property for the stupidest reason. Then he came back to FA and FO some more and got arrested. That's fuck around and find out. Longer version. I own a building downtown in my little village. Think a tiny strip mall with a few businesses inside one building. I also own a small parking lot behind it that's part of a much larger parking lot complex owned in part by the village and also by some other business owners. My part of the parking lot is clearly marked and divided from the rest by a median with trees and large boulders in it, and it ends against the wall of a neighboring building. This is downtown, so there are no spaces between buildings here. In the winter, my plow guy pushes the snow to the far back end of my parking lot, such that it is against the trees and boulders. We had a recent storm, so there was a pile about 15 feet tall there when this happened. I came over to the lot the other night after work to check on some things, and was on a phone call with my car's hands-free when I arrived. When I pulled in, there was a kid, maybe 10, playing on a giant pile in my lot. I was on the call for almost 10 minutes, sitting there, and never saw an adult the whole time. I thought the kid might be the grandson of one of the tenants in my building, so I texted him real quick to ask. He was there in the building and said that he didn't know who the kid was, but that he'd been out there a long while and he hadn't seen any adults either. Concerned, I got out of my car and approached the kid, who turned and gave me a deer in the headlights look from halfway up the snow pile. For the record, I'm a 40-something woman, 5 feet tall if I try hard. The kid was almost bigger than me. Right as I closed my door, suddenly an older woman, 60s, and a younger man, 30s, appeared around the corner of the next building over. I told them politely that the kid could not play on that snow pile in my parking lot. I said it was a safety and liability issue. Instead of responding like a normal human with a okay or sorry that won't happen again, the Karen instantly started yelling at me, calling me a fucking bitch, a psycho. I don't know what it's like to have kids and so on. Her idiot son, who's both tall and obese and easily twice my size, started stomping over towards me, demanding to know if I was the owner of the building and the parking lot. I put the hood of my vehicle between us and also opened the door of one of the stores and told him that, yes, I was, and the snow pile in question was on my clearly marked private lot. There are clearly visible signs everywhere, including on the trees in the median. He tried to argue that because I don't own a building right next to my lot, and the owner of that building has no problem with his kids playing in the snow, that it's fine. I told him that has nothing to do with fucking anything, and that he needed to take his kid and leave. He stomped closer to me, and I yelled up to the tenant, "Hey, obviously male name, can you come here?" That slowed the idiot's son down, as did me pulling out my cell and saying I was calling the cops. "Go ahead," he yelled at me, while the Karen continued to shriek from slightly outside my property that I was a bitch and a cunt. I also had a concealed carry pistol in my pocket, but he didn't know about that. Holy shit. Yeah, don't be out there messing with people. You don't know if they're carrying guns, man. He did back off enough that I went into my tenant's shop, locked the door, and talked to the cops. They're only a couple blocks away from the building, so it took no time for an officer to come. We talked. He told the Karen and the entitled son to get the fuck out, and I went into my building to do what I came for in the first place. Not a minute after the cop left, though, entitled son came back, walled up the snow pile, and began trying to rip the posted private parking lot, customers and employees only sign off the nearby trees. He pulled one off and threw it at the door of the shop I was in. My tenant and I watched it out the back window of the store, and we both recorded it on our phones. I called the cops back, told them what was happening, and told them I wanted them both trespassed and to press charges for vandalism and property damage for pulling that sign down and damaging the tree. They came back, and his fat ass went to jail. All for not being smart enough to tell his fucking kid, don't play there. I love this top comment, like the last story too. It's like some people want to go to jail. Story number 4. I don't do COVID. I just got out of a long hospital stay, part of which was in a double room. When my roommate came in, she walked past my bed, and I could see that she was a boomer-aged white woman. No biggie, not every boomer is a boomer, and obviously nothing wrong with being white, which is relevant. When you're brought in, you're immediately asked if you're up to date on your flu and COVID shots. It's an easy question, where even if it wasn't true, you can lie and they'll accept the answer. When he asked Boomer roommate, her answer was, yes for flu, but I don't do COVID. Which she said with defiant pride. When a doctor came in and had her recount why she was there, I was shocked how reckless it was that they'd put her in a room with someone else and how dumb it was that they believed her. She supposedly had an allergic reaction to an antibiotic that she had taken many times before. The symptom of this allergic reaction? First, she felt clammy and weak. Then a bad cough with chest pain. Then so lethargic and weak that she had to call for an ambulance. This was over the course of a day or two. Does that sound like an allergic reaction to you? Apparently, it was good enough excuse for doctors who decided to buy her story, and the reason for being admitted was sudden heart trouble. What disease causes damage to the heart? The icing on the cake? She spent the whole time watching Fox News with plenty of and exactly exclamations where anything pertaining to immigrants or black people being bad. So sure, babe, you don't do COVID, but sure as shit does you. Oh, man. Someone says, as a healthy millennial who was diagnosed with COVID yesterday, I hope she is enjoying it. Someone else says, that sounds like an easy hospital to get admitted to. I'm a nurse of 38 years, and you need to be half dead to get in. They have so many diagnostics to see what their sudden heart trouble was. They likely would have done a COVID test in ER. OP says, they didn't COVID test me, so I don't know if that's the default or not. They performed an EKG, an echocardiogram, a contrast CD, or maybe MRI, and some other stuff I can't remember. I swear I'm not nosy. It's just hard not to overhear when you're less than 2 meters apart. Someone else says, I wish COVID would have taken more of them out, honestly. Though if they did have their way, a lot of their spawn may end up getting polio and the like. That is a terrible thought. Next story. A boomer yelled at my sister, who is dying from cancer complications, to stop faking it and get out of her wheelchair. I, 43 female, have a sister, 45 female, who was diagnosed with cancer in 2019. It has been a long road. She received a transplant and has GVHD. It's been incredibly difficult to watch her get frail and lose mobility. She can't work and spends the majority of her time at hospital getting treatments. She called me to share that her favorite group from Europe was having a rare concert in the state I live in and that I should go. I flew her out, we live on the opposite sides of the US, and invited our sister, 41 female, to join us. So OP is 43, her sister with cancer is 45, and then her sister that they invited out is 41 years old. She called to tell me a few weeks prior to her trip that she can't walk across the room anymore and is very weak. I made every accommodation that I could for her. This is a big deal and she has a tendency to downplay how sick she is. When I picked her up from the airport, I barely recognized her. She told us that night that she thinks this is the end of her life and is looking at palliative care. This was the last time she would be physically able to travel and that we would be able to do one of our girls' trips. She needs help to get out of a wheelchair. We went to the concert and the venue was very small and intimate and not ADA compatible. There was no handicap parking spots or elevators or designated spots for wheelchairs. I found her a spot behind the last row just to the side of the hallway and grabbed 2 small chairs for us. There are 2 entrances about 30 feet apart from each other. It takes less than a minute to exit the theater and walk around to the other entrance. We were talking when a boomer started yelling at me to move out of his way. He was ramming his walker into the folding chair completely. I told him we can't move because she's in a wheelchair and there's no place for her to go without being in the flow of traffic. He continues to violently ram my chair and yells loudly, "She's faking it. Tell her to get her fat ass up and move." Man, people are wild. I responded calmly, "She can't get out of the wheelchair. Please turn around, use the exit, and come in the other door." He yells and rams my chair even harder. "I'm the one in a wheelchair with a disability, not her. Move." By this time, both my sisters are aware of what's happening. My sister, 41, climbs over the wheelchair. This was precarious, and tried to back up the wheelchair. She can only move it back about 4 inches. He screams at her, "Move your lazy ass and stop making life harder for a poor old man." I cannot easily get out as he is blocking the only viable exit and running his walker repeatedly into my chair. I was afraid he was going to hit me, so I climb over both folding chairs in my high heels and my sister in her wheelchair. He keeps ramming my empty chair and making a scene. The area is so narrowed that it's barely wide enough for his walker, so there is no way he can get by us unless he wants to move the chairs, and we would have to completely exit the venue. He continues on with his tantrum, then starts demanding that I go find his wife because she will know what to do. She's just on the other side of the aisle from my sister and ignoring him. He abruptly stops, turns around, and in less than a minute is next to his wife. What the hell, man? Meanwhile, all three of us are really shaken. So many people, including the ushers, witnessed this, and no one helped us. I was so angry and shaking, and it took me a long time to calm down. Top comment says, I'm sorry this happened. If you pay for the concert, I would definitely file a complaint with whoever runs the venue. OP says, thank you, I'll look into that. Someone else says, OP, it's a good thing I'm not a relative of yours and there at the time, or I would have wrapped that walker around his neck. OP says, thank you, really. Anyone just saying something would have been wonderful. Story number 6. Sure, Jan. I work in a sometimes customer-facing job. Today, while explaining we were doing a donor drive for purchasing food for several families for the holidays, the guest just stared at me. I explained usually the requests are for things like pajamas, puzzles, books for kids, etc. And this year they all want food. She proceeded to tell me that this is so sad, and she is glad Trump is president again, so next year these kids can get toys and things will be better for everyone. Oh man. Of course, she did not donate a single penny, drives a new Range Rover she can barely climb into, and was carrying a bag that easily cost more than $1,000. And I absolutely know she maybe gave in other ways this year, but not even $1 after peppering me with questions as to why we were doing something we do every year. Boomer's gonna boom, I guess. Top comment says, I never met a Trumper who was empathetic or generous to poor folks, ever. Next story. Boomer judged my groceries. Every year, my family does one of those adopt a family thing where we work with a local charity and buy presents for a family in need. We got the list this year, and there was an additional note that the mother was having a difficult time breastfeeding and that in lieu of other gifts for her, she would like formula. My wife experienced something similar, so of course we bought the mother a gift from the list, and then went to our local warehouse store to get several canisters of formula. When I'm adding them to the cart, a boomer Karen decided to share her opinion that, breastfeeding is the best for a child. Stop. She looked stunned and started to stammer about the welfare of a child. I'm done taking boomer shit, so I told her that just because a geriatric hamster on a wheel in her head produced a thought, she should keep it to herself. Once again, she had diarrhea of the mouth about the virtues of breastfeeding. My brother's wife died in a car accident on Thanksgiving night. He's been rationing the frozen breast milk, but it's running out. Do you want his number to tell him about your thoughts? Oddly, she couldn't speak after that. Top comment says, post the story to traumatize them back. Final story for today. Why can't we keep any firefighters? I live in one of the most heavily elderly, red, and deeply MAGA areas in the country. It is all over the news that over 100 firefighters have resigned in our country because starting pay is $15 an hour. They pointed out that this is way more than minimum wage. This followed an article from last year that hundreds of city and county jobs are going unfilled. They want to pay code enforcement officers, librarian assistants, etc. starting pay of $10 to $11 an hour. If I hear one more crypt keeper screaming about nobody wants to work, I am going to lose my mind. Top comment says, there's a lot of frustration in my school district about the lack of school bus drivers. Starting pay is something like $17.50 an hour, which is basically what you could get working at Walmart. For that, though, you get reduced hours and a workday that starts well before 6 a.m. If you can't find workers for the salaries you're offering, you're not offering enough. Some people have this weird idea that they should get all the service that they want without paying for anything, but that's just how things work. Next comment says, I'm a medic and boomers are constantly amazed when they hear that I work 80-hour weeks with regular 48-hour shifts. It's because I don't get paid enough to haul you to the hospital when you fall down again, Ethel. And no, it's not. You don't do it for the money. You do it to help people. I absolutely do it for the money. It's my marketable job skill. The more senior paid guys in my area make $150K depending on the town. Starting salary is closer to $80,000. Being paid less than $25 an hour for a career that involves risking your life to save others is peak late stage capitalism. The final comment, nobody wants to work for starvation wages. Totally true. Hey everyone, thanks for liking my videos, subscribing, commenting, and staying till the end and enjoying all the stories. I'll see you in the next video.